You can't build a modern website nowadays without throwing in some colors here and there. Welcome back guys to this tutorial in which I teach you everything you need to know when working with colors in CSS. This tutorial is going to be separated into 4 quick sections. In section 1, we are going to be looking at the properties of an element color can be applied to. In section 2, we'll look at the ways of specifying colors in CSS. Section 2, we'll look at the different tools that can help you pick the right color. And section 4, which is the last section, very important, we'll look at different tips you can implement when working with colors in CSS to facilitate your life. So I've just gone ahead and opened the project here, and the project is presently empty. We just have a title, colors in CSS, which we have here, colors in CSS. Browser is open to the right with no content for the moment. At the top here, we have the different sections in MD files, which I'm just going to be going through in this tutorial. So as I earlier mentioned, the different topics we are going to be looking at. Section 1, we'll look at the properties of an element which color can be applied to. Then we'll look at the ways of specifying the colors, and we'll look at the tools to pick the right color. And we'll finally look at some tips to apply when working with colors. So for the section 1, which is the properties of an element to which color can be applied, we'll notice that we have the text color property, the background color, and border color. So these are properties of the box model, if you remember in the previous tutorial. So we can apply color to the text, we can apply color to the background of an element and to the border of an element. So let me just go ahead and copy this code so we go quickly over the concepts and I don't waste time typing out stuff. So if I just replace false here with that content. Okay. Let me just uncomment the paragraph. So we have this paragraph here in our body. We have the styles. For the paragraph, we have the text aligned to the center so that the paragraph is at the center. We have padding 10 pixels for the first parameter, which is this 10 pixels, means 10 pixels to the top and bottom of the paragraph. Then 15 pixels means 15 pixels to the left and right of the paragraph. And as we saw here, we saw that the color can be applied to the text itself, to the background, or to the border of the element. So I'm going to come back here, and the first thing we're going to be doing, so I'm going to apply a color to the text, which is this paragraph text we see here. So if I uncomment this line, see now we're applying a color of blue violet to the text itself. So that's the first property to which color can be applied to. If we apply color next to the background of the element, if I uncomment this other line, background color to be aquamarine. So now we're applying the background color of aquamarine, which is this light green, to the paragraph itself. And the last property to which color can be applied is the border of the element. So if I uncomment this other line, we're applying a border color of green yellow to the element. So we see this green yellow border color around the element. So the good thing with these properties is color cannot be applied, must not be applied only to a paragraph. All the other HTML elements, headings, buttons, links can have these colors applied to them as well. So if I uncomment this other line, which is the button, for example, you see that we'll get a button with click me text in it, and we can as well apply a background color, border color, and text color to this button. So if I add the button style to the styles of the paragraph as well, put here button, you see that the button as well gets all these styles which were applied to the paragraph. So we are not limited to apply these styles only to 1 or 2 elements on a page. You can apply them to as many elements as you would like to apply them to. So that's it. We have just seen how to apply the different properties of an element to which color can be applied. We are now going to be taking a look at the ways of specifying colors in CSS. So for section 2, which is the ways of specifying colors, now is section 2. So there are 2 main ways of specifying colors in CSS. You can specify the colors normally, or you can specify the colors with opacity. So what we are going to be looking at, the ways of specifying the color normally. There are 4 main ways of specifying the color normally. and there are three ways of specifying the colors with opacity. So the first way of specifying the color is using the color name itself. You can specify the color also using a function RGB, in which we pass parameters red, green, and blue for the different color values. You can specify the color using hexadecimal, and you can also specify the colors using HSL, which is another format in which you pass in the hue, the saturation, and the lightness of the color. So in order to do that, let me just go ahead and copy this code quickly so that we don't waste time typing things out. So if I copy this code and head back to our HTML, that was for the styles, if I remember. Let me see. Yeah, that's in the styles. So we are going to leave the text align of the paragraph to center and the padding to be what it was. So we are going to be replacing now the colors, because that's what we are looking at in this tutorial, how to specify colors. So I'm going to take that and let me uncomment the button so that we are left with the paragraph in the body, and the styles want to apply the styles to the paragraph. So as we saw, the first way is specifying the colors normally. There are 4 different ways of specifying the color normally. The first way is using the color name itself. So using the color name, we are going to uncomment this first line. So you see that we can specify the color using the color name. That's background color, giving the name of the color. And there are several different colors. There are about 140 colors the browser is going to understand by default. Meaning that you can as well give a value here of green, or you can put in any color you know here, and it's going to specify the color for this property. You can as well apply to the border and to the text as we saw, but in this case we're applying to the background of this paragraph. So if I've gone ahead and I've opened, this is WTV School, so I'm going to leave the link in the description below, and here it shows you a list of all the colors which are supported by the browser for default, and there are actually about 140 of them, meaning that I can just take the name of any color here. For example, if you take the olive color from here and you head back to your code, you can paste the color here, olive, and you see that that color is applied to your paragraph. You can grab any color from here and you apply to your code. So that's the first way of specifying colors, using the color name. Itself. The next one is specifying color using RGB. So RGB stands for red, green, and blue. And using RGB, you give in 3 values. The first one is the red value, the next one is green, and the next one is blue. So let me first of all comment the line in which we use normal colors, and so that I'm going to explain that of RGB. So if I comment this line for RGB, notice that the color of the paragraph becomes red, and it's actually red because the red value has its highest value in this case, which is 255. Green values and blue values are 0, meaning that you have no value for green and blue. Red is 255, which is its highest value. So that's another way of specifying colors using RGB. The third way of specifying colors is using hexadecimal. So if you want to use hexadecimal to specify colors here, let's uncomment this line. And so this is still another way of specifying the red color, but in this case we are using hexadecimal. So with hexadecimal, the values range from 00 to FF, and in this case FF, which is the first value, stands for red. That's why we have red here. The blue and green are the next values. See that if I move the FF to the next set, which is that of green, it becomes green. If I take it back to the first, it becomes red because of this FF which is there. So you see that I can play around with these values, and if you are not quite understanding what I'm explaining, well, just stick along, because I'm going to be showing a tool which is going to facilitate your life when it comes to manipulating colors in CSS. The fourth way of specifying colors is using HSL, and HSL is another way which came in to specify colors of late, and it's very simple to specify colors using HSL. So with HSL, what you have is a color wheel ranging from 0 to 360 for the first value. 360 is the highest value and it stands for red. So in this case, we have 360 for red, and the others 100% which is for the saturation, meaning we have a full red value, and 50%, which is for the brightness. So that's for HSL. And just stick along, I'm going to show a tool which is going to facilitate your life. It actually makes working with these colors very easy. So let's go ahead and look at the tool I mentioned for specifying colors, making your life easy when working with colors. So we're still on WTV schools, and here we have an RGB calculator. You saw that the first way of specifying colors was this first method, which was using RGB, in which we pass in values of red, green, and blue. And with this RGB calculator, it facilitates your life. You see that in this first case where the red is on its highest value, at the end, the red is on its highest value. Green and blue are on 0, 0. We have a red color. If you move this wheel to the bottom where you have a red of about 0 or a very low value of red, and you increase the green to have a high value, you see that you get a green color. And it's similar for the blue. If you reduce the green to a very low value and increase the blue to a high value, you have that color. And what you can simply do is go ahead and copy this color here, and if you head back to your code and paste it where you had the color, it's going to change the color to have that value. So if I come here, background color for example, and I replace it with the color I just copied, blue, by simply copying the color from here and pasting here, we'll get that color we wanted. So this is a very intuitive way of seeing the colors. And what you can do here is you can mix and match. You can mix different colors together. You must not move the wheel to the highest value of red, blue, or green. You can mix different colors and get different color values for RGB ways of specifying the color. And what you simply do is copy the color here and paste it in your code. So that's for RGB. If we look at the other way, which was choosing colors using hexadecimal. For hexadecimal, we saw that you need to specify values using hexadecimal from 00 to FF, and you need to have this number sign symbol in front of the color you are specifying. So if we come back here and move to the next link, which is using hexadecimal, you see that you have this space here to fill in the red value. And if you move this wheel, you see you get different hexadecimal values, meaning that when you are the higher value, the highest value here on the first wheel for red, you have a red color. If all the other colors are set to 0 or are set to very low values, you are going to get red. So you see that you just need to play around with this wheel. If you want to get blue, it means all the other colors have to be on low values and blue should be on its highest value. You can mix and match these different colors using hexadecimal. You just see that the format is you have a number sign at the start. You have two values for specifying the red value, and you have two other values for green and two others for blue. So that's hexadecimal. And once you get the color you want, you can copy from here and just head back to your code and paste it, and you are going to get the desired color here. So that's for using hexadecimal. And the next one was using HSL. For HSL, we saw that you need to specify the first value, which is H. We mentioned that it was a color wheel from 0 to 360. So you see that this color wheel is important because it actually goes through all the different colors. You have red, yellow, green, all different colors to 360. The next one is the saturation. Saturation stands for how intense the color is actually. So you see that when you reduce the saturation value, you see the color fades away to a certain shade of gray. And when the saturation is high, you have that color value itself. Meaning that if you're on the hue of, let's say, blue, to get the actual blue color, your saturation has to be on 100%. If you're on green, to get the actual green color, your saturation has to be on 100%, because if you descend, the saturation reduces and the color fades away. For brightness, we all know what brightness is all about. Brightness is either dark or it's light. So when you move down in brightness, the color becomes dark, and when you increase the brightness, the color becomes light. So that's for HSL. And you see that this really is very important. After mixing and matching these colors here, you can just copy the color you want from here, and you go to your editor and paste the color, and you're going to get that color you wanted. So that's for HSL. So all what we have seen till now are just simple ways of the normal way of specifying the colors. We have seen how to use the color name. We have seen how to use RGB. we have seen how to use hexadecimal, and we have seen how to use HSL. So another way of specifying the colors is to specify them using opacity. And to specify colors using opacity means that the colors themselves are going to have a foot value, because we saw that the initial first values are red, green, and blue, and we're going to have a foot parameter in this case, which is alpha. And alpha stands for transparency or the opacity. That's how the transparent the color is going to look like. So this alpha or transparency is going to be added to all the different ways of specifying colors. Using hexadecimal as well, we can add a third parameter, which is the alpha, the foot parameter at the end, which is the alpha. And using HSL, we need to add a foot parameter as well, which is the alpha. So you see that this alpha stands for the opacity or the transparency, and it's actually the last parameter we add in this case when we are working with the opacity. So if I go ahead to demonstrate how this opacity, adding this opacity to the different color formats is going to work, let me just go ahead and copy this code here, and we head back to our code and replace what we have here with it. So that was this one. Now is the next way of specifying colors. So if I add it now here, so I want to specify colors now using opacity. The first way is using the normal RGB as we saw in the previous case, but it's not simply RGB. We have an additional value in this case, which is A, and this A stands for the alpha, opacity or transparency. And you can change this value here, which is the last parameter. If I make it when it's 1, it means it's the highest value, and the color is its full value, means it's not transparent at all. If I take it to 0, the color becomes completely transparent, I don't see it. And if I make it 0.5, you see that the color is semi-transparent, so it's midway between its full color and 0. So this opacity, this alpha color, ranges from 0 to 1, and you can put in any value from 0 to 1, and it's going to determine how transparent the color is going to be. It's the same thing we are going to look at when we use the other color formats. For example, using the hexadecimal. See that in this case we are using hexadecimal, but instead of having 6 values, the first stands for red, the next 2 for green, and the last 2 for blue. But in this case we have an additional last 2 which stand for the opacity. FF is the highest opacity, and in this case if we specify FF to be 0, 0, the color is going to be completely transparent. Now we cannot see the color. But when we use FF, the color is fully transparent, and midway between 0, 0 and FF is 8, 8. So if we put 8, 8 here, the color becomes semi-transparent. So that's specifying using hexadecimal and opacity in this case. And the last way is using HSL with opacity. So if you use HSL with opacity, so here is HSLE. So HSLE, this last parameter, which is A, as we saw in the previous cases, the last parameter stands for the opacity or transparency or the alpha. So to any of them, opacity, transparency, or alpha. So when it's 0.5 is the middle value, so that's why the color here is semi-transparent. And if we make it 1, the color is going to be its full color. So 1, we get that full color. If you didn't clearly understand what I explained here, just hold on, because I'm going to use a tool which is going to make things clearer. So if we head back to WTV schools and we take a look at what this transparency all means, using RGBA, we saw that this first one is the red value, this one is for the green, the next one is for the blue, and the last one is for the alpha, which is the opacity or transparency. This value ranges from 0 to 1. So if I modify this value here, when it's 0, you see that the background, the color here is completely transparent, and as I change it to its highest value, which is 1, we get the actual value itself. So you can vary any of these colors here. For example, if one red on its highest value and green and blue to be low. So if we get this red color, because the green and blue are 0 and the red is on its highest value, we can modify the alpha, which is the transparency of that color, to make the color lighter or darker. And we get an example of it here. So we have a particular color here with the red, blue and green having the same values. That's 255, 91, 71, 255, 99, 71, 255, 99, 71. So the only thing which is varying in all of these colors is actually that value of the alpha. You notice that when it's 0, the color is completely transparent and you cannot see it. When it's 0.2, the transparency reduces and you can see the color a lot better. When it's 0.4, transparency reduces. Till when the color is 1, when the transparency is 1, you get the full color. So that's how to use the additional value, which is the alpha, when specifying colors. So that's using alpha to specify colors. So that's it. We have gone over the ways of specifying colors in CSS. So the next thing we are going to look at is the tools to help you pick the right color. So we just saw a tool to help you pick the right color. So if you go to section, we are presently in section TV. Section TV, the tools to help you pick the right color. We just saw these WTV schools, the tools in WTV schools to help you pick colors. So I've seen this tool to help you pick RGBA colors. I've seen that to help you pick HSL colors. Seen that to pick hexadecimal colors. That to pick RGBA colors. I've also even seen that it has a color palette here which you can choose different colors from. So I'm going to leave the link to these WTV schools in the description. So the next thing we are going to look at are color pickers. Another tool to help you pick the right color is a color picker. So if you notice, VS Code already has its inbuilt color picker. For example, if on HSL, when you hover over the color itself, you see this thing that appears is a color picker. And this color picker, you see that this one is the opacity. You can reduce and increase the transparency of this color. And you see that it gives you different color formats. By clicking on this, you get the different color formats. When you click on it, you get RGBA. Click on it, you get hexadecimal. You click on it, you have HSLA. So you can actually pick a different color just by hovering over a color here in your CSS and moving down the different color wheels. Another color picker we can also use is a browser color picker. For example, you can download a color picker from the browser, and that's very important because when you are going to be working on real life projects, you may see a color which you don't know the exact color code. For example, if I'm on this site, WTV schools for example, and I see this shade of green, and I want to know what this color, this shade of green color is, you can make use of a color picker to do that. And the color picker I'm going to be using here is a browser color picker. So you can head to Chrome extensions and download a color picker such as color picker eyedropper. And any color you come across, if you want to get the hexadecimal or the color value for this color, you just need to click on the extension. It's going to come up with this cross. You see that above the cross you have fields that tell you the different color. If I hover over this color, for example, I get the hexadecimal and the RGB color for it. So if I hover over any portion of the browser, I can get the exact color that corresponds to it. And if I want to get the color for this button, which is this shade of green, if I hover over the button, I get the color. So I just need to click there and come and copy this color code, and I can head back to my HTML, and where I see this color, I can replace this color with the color I just copied from the browser. So you see that we get this exact color. So you see that this color here is the same color we have on our page, and that's because of this color picker. I can do same for anything. If I hover over this color here, if I hover over this color, I can copy it and I replace this other color with it. It's a number sign. So you see that we get this exact color. So that's it. We just went over the different tools to help you pick the right color, and that means we are done with this section. So the next section we are going to be looking at is the tips you need to that can help you when you are working with colors in CSS. So that's section 4. Section 4. So the tips to help you when you are working with colors in CSS. The first tip is to decide on a theme color to use when you're programming or developing a website. So that's very important. That's, for example, if we head back to WTV schools, you are going to notice that the theme color they use on this side is actually the green theme with black text. So you see that their buttons have a green background color, the text is black, and the other backgrounds are white. So that's their theme color that I've chosen. You see that they're just going to use here, they just use three main colors. They use black, green, and white. So if you go through the site, through all the different pages of the site, you just notice that those are the colors they use: green, white, and black text. So that's the first tip for working with colors. You don't need to use too many different colors when developing a website. You just choose a particular theme color, your main color, and some secondary color to use. The next tip is to use a light text on a dark background or a dark text on a light background. And what does that tip, what does that one mean? If I come, for example, to my index.html, you see that the text here is black and the background is light. So that's why you can see the text. And what I mean by that is, if I hover over this and I change this background color to a lighter background color, you see that the text stands out because the background is light. But if I change this color to a color which is dark, for example, if I make it a dark color and I save, what you notice is the text is not visible in this case because the text and the background are both dark colors. And to counter this is either I make the background dark and the text light. Like I can decide now to give the color of the text to white. And if I do that, you notice now that the background is dark but the color's text is light, and that's why it's possible for you to see the text. So it's either you make the text dark and the background to be light, or you make the background dark and the text to be light. And that's what you notice on most sites. Take for example this WTV schools, the green on the button, this is a dark shade of green, and that's why the text on the button is white. That's a common pattern you are going to notice on many sites, and it's a good tip to take note of. So if we take a look at the last tip, which is using color variables on your site. So using color variables are very important in cases where you don't want to duplicate code or you don't want to make a mistake when using a particular color. And by that, what do I mean? Let's say on a website we have different places where we want to use the same color. Let's say we have this shade of black, which is this color here, this shade of gray or brown, let's say. And let's say maybe we want to use this the same color for a button. If I uncomment the button here, let's say we want this button to have this the same color, this is the same background color. One thing you could do is, let's say if we have the button, we select the button here, button, I want to give the button a background color. One thing you could do is to come and copy the color and paste the color here, and paste the color here, and you see that the button and the paragraph have the same color. You see that the previous pattern comes in play, which is to ensure that, so we have to close the curly braces, to ensure that the text and the background have contrasting colors, meaning that here I'll need to also give the color of the text to be white to ensure that the text color stands out. Give it a color of white. So you see now that the text on the button is visible. But in this case, I'm not demonstrating, this is not the pattern I'm demonstrating. What I want to explain, the next tip is the color variables tip. So we want to use color variables. So you notice here that we're duplicating code because we're actually copying this background color and we're pasting here. If you have a case where we have many other buttons, like for example, if you have now, let me see, we have another paragraph, or we have a heading. Let me just say heading. We have a heading. Notice that this heading also stands, and let's say we want to give the heading, we style the heading with some, let's call it, that's an H1. We give it a padding and a text align of center as well. padding and the text align or center. Then we'll give it a background color. If you want to give this heading the same background color, what we can do is still to come here and copy. Come ahead and copy this and paste here. Notice that this heading has the same color with the previous two. So the problem here is, if you have many elements on the page you want to utilize this color, and maybe you even have different pages, what you need to do is you go ahead copying these colors and pasting them in the different rows for the color. But there's a simple way to do this, and that's using color variables. Because what happens if maybe you copy this color or you are typing this color and you forget one letter for example, you see that it breaks the whole game, because you cannot keep track or you cannot ensure that the color is consistent. You can make an error while copying it. So what you can do is use a color variable, and you can specify the color variable on at the top level. That's, you can give the root, you can add a color variable to the root, and let's say we want to call this color brown, so we say brown, or let's just say my color. So the way you specify color variable is you give this double dash at the start, then you give the color name, and after that you can put the color. So I'm going to copy this color here and paste here. So we have this color my color, and we want to use this color in all these different places on the button, the heading and the paragraph. What you do is you just use the variable. In this case, you see that the variable is my color, so you are just going to use the keyword var, and inside var you put double dash the name of the color, my color. So you see that this paragraph gets that background color. You do the same thing for the button. Instead of using the exact value, you can use a variable which is going to ensure that you don't make a mistake. My color. See that I get that background color, and the same thing here. Instead of, you can possibly make him use var, just make var my color, and get that background color there. So that's how to use color variables to ensure that you don't make a mistake while using colors on your website. So you can create different color variables at the root level, and you can use those colors in different pages without being afraid. So you could create another color variable here, maybe let's say team color green. You can use a color name if you want, so you can specify the color using any color format we saw in the previous cases. So you can even use a color name green using the team color, and you get now this color from here, and you are going to use the color in different places. So that's using color variables. Okay guys, that's it for this tutorial. So we have seen the different properties of an element to which color can be applied, the ways of specifying colors in CSS, tools that can help you pick the right color, and tips that you can use when working with colors in CSS. And since you have made it this far to the end of this video, just look at the bottom right of your screen. See the subscribe button there. Smash that subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next video.